Apparently I'd been doing a bad job with my initial attempts to rig the vehicle together. Front to back, I'd made a terrible impression. The source of this information was the source of the solution. Hassan, my arch nemesis and sworn enemy of not so long ago, shook my hand with a smile. She looked like my old landlady, shabbily dressed in army greens. It seemed like it must have all been a misunderstanding. Perhaps, but I didn't let her shrug off all the blame for torturing me. Obviously I had questions, and Hassan had the answers ready. "I am not exactly working with the army, or this army," she said, leaning against the side of my shed with brave confidence in my woodwork. "They only let me in here on the condition that I never leave. I think that's their way of executing me." "For what?" I asked, half expecting it to be an agreeable reason. Turns out I had the wrong idea about this whole thing. Hey, what are the chances of that? Hassan promised more, but quit the conversation to show me her motorbike. It was underwhelming. She'd rode in on a small handmade bike almost fit for a child. It had a cracked plastic trailer with big wheels on the back. She opened the lid and showed me boxes of ammo, food, and some documents. They looked familiar. "Your tower's gone to hell," she reported. "Yep, those were my supplies from the penthouse, delivered across the state just for me. Together we brought them down into the dingy living space in the cell." Hassan was impressed by it all, having only heard descriptions of the place. I asked her again about this deal she'd made with the army. "This country is dead," she began dramatically. She had been practicing the whole way, I bet. "Let me explain one thing up front. The colonel, the guys out there, they aren't the army, not the old army. They're dead. Most of them are in here, the infection zone. Your tower. You know, right?" I nodded impatiently. "Apparently you went to the old checkpoint in the north by the scrapyard. What did you see there?" I told her about my antics there, mostly just nearly dying, then actually dying, which she already knew all about. "You were going after the survivor caravan, weren't you? The insurgents?" "I don't really know," I said. "Everyone's an insurgent. Them, army, you." "No," she shot back. "I was sent here to stop them." After I pressed for a sturdier explanation, she said, "Crazy Jake and his crew broke out and took over. They killed EastCom troops and took the base, and spread the infection outside of the zone. Only justice is that they've been trying to clear it up the whole time after. Anyway, EastCom sent me to find out what happened, from the inside." I asked if she was a spy, and she happily confirmed it. The chances that she was going to kill me, for one reason or another, grew. Then she said, "Thing was, they took these prisoners, found research being done in this zone, and I don't know, they got really into it, and thought it was going to be real and helpful, and basically gave up the plan to liberate the place. Just became the new guard, carried on everything much as before, although there weren't many survivors left inside after that exodus. Still, they got this vector program going, and it took off. The rest of the country was listening, and EastCom's massive retribution never happened. Then, well, EastCom all fell apart for a while thanks to that woman, you heard her, the president. She's been putting it back together without all the old commanders. It was worse than I thought. And you, and everything here's the opposite. It's actually getting somewhere, right? So I brought them all over. It's actually our one chance to get out of this, just before we all crash, thanks to you. The president let me in here to help. They're all morons, unforgivable idiots, probably murderers just as much as the black money bosses who ended the world. But yeah, they like you, and they don't know." She leant closer and whispered, "They still don't know what I'm going to do here." I asked what that was. She said she was going to, and I quote, "give you to the world." It was one way of saying she was going to help me escape, just with a load of caveats destined to be pinned onto the end of that process. And it all had to start with getting my wheels up and running. You'd never guess which post-apocalyptic super spy happened to be a petrolhead mom and a dab hand with a submachine gun on the side. Seemed she'd travelled from some place in the west, which was where she said I needed to go to escape. That meant she'd been in the zone for a few days at least. I asked her about the previous Red Mist night. She put her hand over her face and said she had a mask. "Sadly, I am human, born and bred. That means I can't bleed, or drink most of the water, or breathe the aeroplankton bloom. They said there was an oxygen compressor here, by the way. I'll need it, or I better go soon. I pretended to know what that was while looking around the tiny, almost empty room. Hassan said she had a few minutes to spare, so no need to find it now. What happens if you breathe the stuff? I asked. The zombies will come for me, like they do for you, she said. I will be a host to the aeroplankton. Once that happens, it isn't drinking water that gets you, it's their teeth. She made an infuriating clicky sound, clapping her teeth together. Then that's fine, I said, because we're going to be locked in the same cell, doesn't matter which of us they want. I managed to establish the aeroplankton and the red mist were similar things. Hassan explained it like there was this stuff in the air, a microscopic life form that the Diomedian bacteria could produce in some weird cocoon thing, all too small to see. These things drifted on the wind, and when you breathed them in, they stuck in your lungs. This marked you forever as a target. When you breathed, the plankton's feces and offspring spread in the air, and that, Hassan claimed, was what the red mist frenzy was looking for. UV light from space, or a satellite, she said, speeds up growth and mutations, and makes the plankton multiply, turning the air red. The hyped bacteria both feed on them and use their flow to find any breathing hosts. Basically, if you breathe, monsters come and kill you. Even if you don't get mauled, some weird creatures are living in all of our lungs now. Everyone else wasn't getting superpowers out of the deal, but indeed, that's where I and my stupid charade of science come in. Alright, so that all made sense. Hassan, while apparently working for me and against the second-hand army, was devout enough to the science behind it all. I guess I was too. Maybe I should share my gift with the world. Didn't seem like justice to me, but Hassan's earnestness made me think that perhaps it would be to everyone else. I might understand one day. Depends whether I can still die of old age. Hassan didn't know the answer to that, and left to rummage on the surface after I asked. I was compelled to follow. No choice. 10 minutes of not being alone wasn't enough. I wondered what Hassan would think if she saw me talking to the guns. I rudely ignored their cries for updates on the situation and located Hassan topside. Good news, the machine she needed was there. She rode her bike over and took an oxygen tank out of the trailer. It was like a scuba diver's gear. She said filling it back up from the air was going to drain my batteries. Sounded like a good thing. Camera might start buzzing at any moment if we weren't careful. Then it was back to criticizing my scrap heap on wheels. Point 1, it needed new wheels. I was doing worse than I thought. Hassan was pretty excited though. She went back to her bike, then returned with a familiar document. It was the boat-like tank design specs she'd thoughtfully gifted me weeks ago. There was less secret meaning behind it than I first thought. She really did want me to try and maintain one of these things, presumably after stealing it. Making it from scratch, well, that seemed to be her style, and so it was decided upon that my escape vehicle would have a sloped metal front for protection. The BRDM-2 was the design's name. Sounded a bit like burden. That was what the night fairies had, and Hassan claimed they had stolen it from somewhere in the infection zone, along with a healthy supply of those manuals, a whole crate. Had to keep reminding myself that if Hassan's story about the crazy Jake crew taking over was real, those night fairies weren't really the army. Just fellow travelers hoping to go home sometime, and I was their ticket, so long as I stayed on the edge of death. There you go then. They were the good guys after all, sort of, just happened to suck for me. Listen to me complaining about immortality and superpowers. I only wanted them to ask politely. Hassan had several ideas about how to get my ride running, most of which I didn't really follow, and all of which required some tools we didn't have. She wanted to heat up the scrap metal to fold and bend it, which meant we needed a crucible to cook it up in. Fuel for cooking wasn't an issue, by the way, as the safety cell was partially built right through a coal vein, so there were loose coal piles all around the camp, acting as very flammable obstacles. Hassan, the walking solution, knew exactly where to go to get what we needed. The old spy perch, presence should be there already, she said with a grin. I asked her to lead the way. She pointed me southeast. I gave her the bicycle and jogged along behind, my bag empty and hungry for loot. She said there was a lot where we were going. Could have asked her where that was, but there were other things I'd been wanting to know for a long time. I asked her what was happening to the world, who was alive, and so on. Hard to say. Less and less information getting around. Not much, I bet, she said dryly. Eastcom's okay, in the grand scheme of things. You shouldn't be worrying about that. You've helped, even. Day to day it's fine if the bacteria plays nice. Food isn't a problem. The people the bacteria killed saw to that. Killed and brought back? I asked. No, just killed. In the beginning, that was, before the superior strains were selected for. It was just a disease. The cadaver would still display signs of life, like the animal carcasses. Oh yeah, I actually got a little book on this somewhere, I said. The half-dead corpses spit out crops if you put seeds in them. Something like that, she nodded. Food is everywhere, not enough animals to eat all the stuff the bacteria has managed to replicate. It's strange. You don't know how many plants and animals there are until the countryside is just the same handful. Must be the same coast to coast by now. She didn't want to say much more about it. I couldn't tell if things were worse or better than I'd imagined. Maybe just different, and at the same time not so different to the world I was trapped in already. We emerged into a clearing in the woods. A hill sloped down in front of us, and built into its side was a walled-off mansion. Great real estate, although like the army's secret house it had no road. It was probably supposed to fulfill a similar purpose, but Hassan claimed it had been captured by insurgents very quickly. It was Captain Navisgain who showed it to me. He's a good man, least crazy of them, Hassan commented. She showed me inside. The interior wasn't much, just building supplies and bare brick. She pulled a cloth mask over her face and waved me to go down some stairs into the basement. I proceeded. Glowing zombies and plenty of grunts came to block my path. I bowled them down with sweeps of the automatic shotgun. Hassan was impressed. I decided courageously to ask what we were doing here. Hassan kept her cool silence and shimmied past me. She rounded a corner with her submachine gun shouldered, then almost returned as its recoil drove her back. A fat zombie got the worst of it, and fell beside a familiar-looking wooden crate, the same kind they'd been using for the airdrops. I said she should be careful, and she began boasting of her various combat exploits of the previous days. I think she was being polite. Wouldn't want me to think she was going out of her way to help me or anything, and certainly not risking her life. Trying to act all badass. When in Rome. Onto the crate. Hassan reported that it had everything she had requested of this Captain Navisgain. She held a hefty pack of plastic explosives up and insisted I take them. That's for the final escape, obviously, she said. I grunt nodded, since it was obvious and all. She had a fat user guide for the machine gun in the bunker, for repairs and the like. Then a smaller metal box that held a stone bowl of sorts. This was the crucible, the tool for making shaped metal. All courtesy of the night fairies. They want you out too, Hassan claimed. They've seen what's happening. They think you deserve it. And what is happening? I asked. Hassan said we should start heading back. I thought she wanted to dodge the question, but once we started hoofing it back north, she told me that my blood and my unique infection method were being used in experiments. This infection method was a reference to my contracting the bacteria while in a medical coma. Normally the comatose didn't get infected, she said. I felt like I'd achieved something there. I asked about the experiments. The mad scientists were, almost inevitably, trying to transfer my superpowers onto themselves or others, and Hassan said it was working. Hard to believe. It changed my mind when I saw what they could do, she said. We have patients from Eastcom, transferred with the main command entourage. Most of them are on meds to keep the infection at bay, but sometimes it starts getting out of hand. The experimental treatment. It's drugs that knock you out, then they use aeroplankton in this breathing apparatus to make it spread inside you rapidly, with help from some serum developed from your very own blood samples. It is essential that the infection completes while the brain is still down for the count. When you wake up, you can grow and be healed by exposure to further plankton like you or the zombies. It sometimes works out. Sometimes. She said it wasn't a pretty process. The bacteria would either restore you to an alive state or a dead state, that latter being a bit like being a zombie, only with the qualities of a coma mixed in. Irreversibly dead, essentially. A special quality these days, and a kinder fate than being plant food, I suppose. This is what it was all about. The success rate has been increasing, she said, half convinced. It's good enough and can only get better, they think. I don't want to trust them, especially not Jake, and she might even say it's my job to stop them. But I can't. We all need this. The cured patients can act as vectors, they think. It won't just be you keeping the zombies here. It could save the world, it really could, if we had more of you. That's the gamble. My part is that I'm going to give you the justice you deserve in the end, at the very least. Just, once you get out there, don't expect a world you'll be able to live in, as yourself or anything. They might still need you. They might. Want to kill me off? I asked. She said she was going to say experiment on me. Could be the same thing. Great. So, I was going to get a chance to leave after all this, and she was saying the one thing I couldn't do was look forward to it. BB Hasan, you've got a real annoying way of helping out. That said, the real help was yet to come. We got back to the safety cell for dinner, and Hassan started setting up the crucible. Felt mad doing this in the bunker, although the ventilation ports everywhere made it easy to build a little oven to cook the metal in. It would take days to get the volume we needed for the vehicle's armor ready, and as Hassan tentatively agreed, leaving later rather than sooner was the ethical choice. Got to take the ethical choice, right? That's what this whole apocalypse has been about. The issue was what to do when the mist descended. Hassan brought her oxygen tank and mask into the living cell, and fished a foil strip of pills from her bag. She was going to lie in the bed with the oxygen mask on, sedated, listening to her brand new looking iPod. I closed the door and went to sit by the barricade. The strange chill of being alone again after all those hours was nasty. I settled in for a standard night, almost thankful for the catharsis of my post. It didn't go as planned. Or not my plan, I should say. About half an hour into the squabbling over on the ramp, a particularly large zombie pushed through and entered the killing tunnel. It strode quickly forward. There weren't enough bodies on the ground to hold it back so early in the night. I needed to shoot fast, yet I was distracted by its face. Not only was the skin healthy, but the features were far too familiar. It looked a lot like me. It wasn't me. There were differences. It was my lost sibling, my overgrown child, my parallel universe form. Whatever it was, there was me in there. The black-jacketed zombie stomped up to the bars and looked at me. I wondered if I should say anything to it. Too late. There was a high-pitched electronic beep. Then the me-zombie exploded and threw me back against the wall. The blast wave rushed down the tunnel and smashed the strip lights in the ceiling. The bars and outer door were bent, although not broken. I struggled to get up. The zombies at the far end recovered from the pressure wave and resumed their twisting attempts to enter the tunnel, past bodies and each other. The door to my right opened. Hassan. She was holding the oxygen mask to her face with one hand and dragging the tank with the other. She moved closer, resting the tank to give me a hand up. I was back on my feet. Hassan asked what happened. I said I didn't know, and that was enough of an answer for now. She drew a silver pistol and fired down the tunnel with careful aim until the magazine was empty. By that time I'd got back up behind the bars. The machine gun's ammo feed had snapped, with debris in the breech. Hassan said she'd fix it tomorrow, very calmly. Needed me some of those pills. I took up the shotgun and resumed my watch. Hassan crouched in the corner in case she was needed again. Then, after hours of standard fare and a decreasing flow of undead, she said she needed to return to the bed or the oxygen wouldn't last. I closed the door behind her, wondering what I would do if she'd turned into a monster in there. Fortunately, we didn't have to find out, and the night played out fine. At about 5, I returned to Hassan, and we both went topside for some air. She asked again what went wrong. and I told her what I saw. She became sullen. "It was like that in the hospital," she said. "I didn't want to say because it might not always be like this. I don't know. I saw it though, with my own eyes. The patients started to look like you when the bacteria regenerated them." Yep, that world out there really wasn't going to be the one I wished I was escaping to. Hassan said the army had dumped failed cases somewhere outside their base. As per the magic trail of plankton or whatever, I guess they found me. As for being wired up to blow, "That's why they called him Crazy Jake," Hassan wryly commented. "I think he knew this would happen. He's pushing you to make you stronger, and he wants me dead." The thing had exploded when it got close to me, so I think Hassan was right. He was triggering the bombs when the devices strapped to them got to just the right position, or maybe the cell itself had the trigger. Insulting to send me to kill me, and against their will, just as all this was against mine. If they had will. When I looked at that face, I hadn't seen a zombie like with all the others. Then again, the guy didn't say anything, and was chasing the plankton like the rest of them. Mad science had more progress to make, as did we. Looking forward to a future of cloned me mutants saving the world from the everlasting undead, while the scant few real humans hid in the corner trying not to get too infected, Hassan and I took her bike downtown to resume collection of metal for the armored car thing. Both of us were tired and less optimistic than yesterday. I wonder if Hassan was starting to listen to her own words about the world that was being created. Saved from the greatest accident there was, in some ways, doomed to a dark and unknown future of constant danger in others. She, and everyone else I bet, wanted to believe that there was some way out of this. No. The only place to move at all was deeper into the madness with me.